My French onion soup recipe is easy and delicious. It has all of the components of the classic soup, the beefiness, the onions, the bread, and the cheese. I'm sure you're going to love it. I started this recipe by sauteing 1 pound of lean ground beef for 10 minutes in about 1.5 to 2 teaspoons of canola oil. Then I sauteed some onions. I took probably 1.5 pounds of onions. I skimmed them, I chopped them up, and then I had 1 pound of yellow onion chopped, to which I added 1 small celery stick. I sauteed those with about 2 teaspoons of oil and half a teaspoon of butter for 5 minutes. Then I grated a small carrot on a cheese grater and added that and cooked that along with the onions and celery for another 15 minutes. So the onions cooked for a total of 20 minutes. And as you can see, there's some nice color. Maybe I could have cooked it a little bit longer, but I was getting tired of standing over the stove. But honestly, I think this will be good. When your onions get nice and golden like that, they have a ton of flavor. But if you've never sauteed onions before, if you're doing a lot at once, it can take longer than you think, so give it some time. What I'm going to do first to make this casserole is I'm going to combine my meat and my onions in this bowl. So here is my meat. Like I said, this is lean ground beef. It was 93.7. Trying to be healthy. Now I'm also going to add the onions. Like I said, it was over a pound of vegetables when they were raw, but I cooked them so long that they have definitely cooked down. Now I'm going to add, I'm not sure exactly, probably a cup of fat-free sour cream. I'm going to do half a cup first, see how it goes, and then I'm going to add my other ingredients, so I'll bring you back. And just as I thought I was going to need, I added 1 cup or 240 grams of the fat-free sour cream. But as always, I'm making this recipe for the first time. I'm kind of inventing it as I go along, and it's easier to add more later than to take away. So after I added the 1 cup of sour cream, it's time to add 1 packet of onion soup mix. Everyone knows that I love to add onion soup mix to my casseroles, and if I'm making French onion soup casserole, it just makes sense. I'm also going to add half a teaspoon each of black pepper, garlic powder, and onion powder, along with some Worcestershire sauce. If you've never had Worcestershire sauce before, it's really complex. It has molasses, it has sugar, it has garlic, it has tamarind paste. I was reading online that it might even have some anchovy paste or something in there. Basically, it has everything. It's very complex. It's salty, I think it's sweet, it has a lot of things going on. It's kind of like soy sauce, it resembles soy sauce. My family members, they like to add this to beef stew, so I just associate it with beef. I know a lot of people add it to meatloaf, and I think that since I'm making French onion soup casserole, it just makes sense to beef up the beefiness, shall we say. This stuff is pretty strong, so I'm going to start out with 1 tablespoon, which is 3 teaspoons. I'm going to mix everything together, and then I will let you know how it is. I ended up adding 3 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. Some people might like 2, some people maybe even 1, but I think 3 really brings out the beefiness. I'm going to add a little bit of salt. It's around 1/8 of a teaspoon because I didn't salt the meat at all. I like the way that it tastes now, so I'm going to add my 1 egg to help bind everything together. Whoops. Continue mixing, and then I will start assembling the casserole. Now that the egg is mixed into the casserole filling, it's time to start assembling the French onion soup casserole. Here I have an 8x8 casserole dish that has been buttered. And as you can see, I have some cheese and some bread. I am using some Italian bread. I know the traditional recipe calls for baguette, but I think that if you're making a home style casserole, just some affordable sliced bread is fine. And I have an 8-ounce block of mozzarella cheese. I know Gruyere is what you use in the soup, but once again, this is something that's nice, quick and easy, homemade. So I have, like I said, my 8-inch block of cheese, half of it here, half of it there. Kind of debating what I want to do. So I'm going to start putting everything together as I decide. I'm going to put down a layer of the meat and onion filling first, just as a base, really quickly, just enough to cover the bottom. Then I'm going to add some bread. Like I said, I am using some Italian bread, some sliced Italian bread that was actually on sale. I thought about toasting the bread first because I know with the soup, a lot of people, they toast the pieces of bread before they put them on top of the soup. But I want this recipe to be easy. And I think that if I leave the bread untoasted in the middle, I'm going to have an interesting combination of textures between the bread that's in the middle and the top layer of bread. So here I'm just, like I said, dot the first layer of bread with about a 1/4 tablespoon of butter. This is a lot easier if your butter is room temperature. I used 3 slices of bread for each bread layer, 2 whole slices and 1 that I ripped in half. But you may use more slices or fewer slices depending on the size of your bread. After pushing down on the bread to make sure that it's packed down and there are no air pockets, add half of the cheese, or 4 ounces. Then add the second layer of ground beef and sauteed onions, followed by another layer of bread, once again dotted with butter. Finish off the French onion soup casserole by adding the rest of the cheese, another 4 ounces. Although I normally top my casseroles with a combination of cheese and sour cream, I just did cheese this time because that's more characteristic of the soup. Also, although I didn't add any extra spices to the cheese itself, if you want to, a little bit of black pepper, garlic powder, and onion powder would be good. Now, this is going to go into a 350-degree oven uncovered for, I'm not quite sure how long. I will definitely let you know. My French onion soup casserole was in the oven at 350 Fahrenheit, uncovered, for 40 minutes. When I was researching this recipe, I didn't see anything similar to what I made, so I was definitely really curious to try it. Visually, I think I did a good job of converting the bowl of soup into a casserole. And when I tasted it, I knew that I had captured the flavor as well. Honestly, this French onion soup casserole was very delicious. It had the onion, the bread, and the cheese that's characteristic of the classic soup, as well as the beefy flavor that usually comes from beef broth. Although the traditional soup usually does not have actual beef in it, I think that adding ground beef to the casserole did a really good of not only bringing the beefy flavor, but also making this feel like a full, complete meal. Although I love to add onion soup mix to my casseroles, and I think it did its job in this one, I think what really made this casserole delicious was the Worcestershire sauce. The W sauce, as I'm going to call it, really did a good job of bringing out the beefy flavor. Since adding beef broth would probably have turned this casserole into a mushy, sloppy mess, I think that the W sauce was the best way to bring out the beefy flavor. While doing research for this recipe and talking to people, I realized that a lot of people add W sauce to their meatloaf, so it makes sense. If you don't have Worcestershire sauce, I think you could use soy sauce along with a little bit of brown sugar. And in terms of the bread, my prediction came true. The bread on top got nice and crispy, while the bread that was in the middle got soft without being mushy. So there was a nice combination of textures. Like I already said, this French onion soup casserole recipe was a hit. I think I did a really good job of capturing the visual appearance of the bowl of French onion soup and turning it into a casserole, without the dish coming across as forced or weird. This was definitely delicious, so if you have some extra ground beef and onions and you want to give this a try, I think you should. If you serve this to your friends or family, I know they'll love it. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.